Hi everybody, it's Krish Kandai here and welcome to the latest edition of FAQ. This week we've been looking at learning how to pray under lockdown, and maybe it's been a tough week for you. These days of being socially isolated from people that we love, out of our normal routines, people are finding it really, really tough. We just said goodbye to one of our dear neighbours. The funeral cortege drew up alongside our house. The neighbours were all standing together. It was a very heavy moment, and yet there was something beautiful about the community standing together in this time of need. But where do you find hope and help, particularly as many people are sick and really struggling with these times? I found great treasure in the Psalms. And if you don't know the Psalms, they are one of God's wonderful gifts to us in the middle of the Bible. They're precious words that God gives us to know how we could speak to him. And today we're looking at the whole issue of wrestling with sickness, which seems very, very timely. And so these Psalms have been used through generations. In fact, there are some traditions of the church that only use the Psalms as their worship songs to God. And some of them only do that unaccompanied, like a cappella psalm singing is the only form of worship that they use. And you might laugh at that because you like a good orchestra or organ or a worship band. But I think they're just recognizing there is something beautiful, majestic, divinely inspired in the Psalms. It's different from every other kind of worship song that you'll ever try to write. Even the best of the best is always going to fall short of these Psalms because they are God inspired. God's Spirit made these Psalms come alive, and that's why they're always going to be relevant and always helpful to us. I don't know if you know Psalm 102, but it's a prayer of an afflicted man when he is faint and pours out his lament before the Lord. That's the little subscription it's given. And that's a little subtitle that is given. And it's a prayer of an afflicted man, and it's a lament. Now, again, many churches struggle, and many Christians struggle with the concept of lament. We like it when we can sing uplifting songs that will make us full of joy. Our kids are doing virtual online schooling, and the teachers like to play them upbeat songs like Pharrell's Happy. And there is something important about upbeat music. It's great. But if that's all you've got, then the music can't resonate with some of your emotions. And sometimes lament has been a neglected area of the church's worship because we think there's never any space for pain and mourning. And that can lead to a kind of emotionally dysfunctional Christianity and an emotionally dysfunctional church. So the good thing about the Psalms is they cover a whole range of different emotions. They're not just in one pitch or tempo. They've got all sorts of different flavours. And so this psalm may be helpful to you. I'm going to read a bit of it, comment a bit of it, and again, if you've ever got questions or queries, I'd love to hear from you, and because we can pick this up again next week. I'm really open to suggestions about what we should be looking at once this psalm series is finished. Psalm 102 verse 1. Hear my prayer, O Lord, let my cry for help come to you. Do not hide your face from me when I am in distress. Turn your ear to me when I call. Answer me quickly. Someone that needs to ask God to hear their prayer, not hide his face, and turn their ear to him. Sounds like someone that doesn't immediately expect to be heard. There is this sense of disconnection and distance for them and God. And maybe you feel like that. Maybe you need to feel like you need to remind God that you're here. The rest of Scripture tells us that God is always listening to us. He talks about, Jesus talks about, does not one sparrow doesn't fall without God knowing about it. And you are much more valuable than sparrows. Or God says, look at the flowers of the field. Look how beautifully they're adorned. You are worth more than any of the flowers or the lilies of the field. But sometimes knowing that truth and feeling that truth, there's a disconnect. Some people talk about the longest journey in the Christian faith is one from head to heart and heart to head. And so these Psalms are here to not just recite truth back to ourselves, but also give us expression for when we don't feel what we believe. That our doctrine might be okay, but our feelings might lag behind. And so this is a safe space to express things to God. And I think there's a wonderful gift here, that it's saying it's okay to bring God how you're actually feeling, not how you want to feel or not how you should feel, but how you're actually feeling. And so there's the space for lament. The psalmist goes on in verse 3, "For my days vanish like smoke, my bones burn like glowing embers, my heart is blighted and withered like grass. I forget to eat my food. Because of my loud groaning, I'm reduced to skin and bones. I'm like a desert owl, like an owl among the ruins. I lie awake, I've become like a bird alone on a roof. All day long my enemies taunt me. Those who rail against me use my name as a curse. For I eat ashes as my food and mingle my drink with tears because of your great wrath. For you've taken me up and thrown me aside. My days are like the evening shadow. I wither away like grass." Wow. I think there are definitely going to be people that resonate with these words. This idea that they're groaning. They forget what time of the day it is. I forget what day of the week it is sometimes because they all feel the same. Some people feel they've lost their appetite. They feel lonely like a desert owl. All of these feelings are permissioned in this psalm. That it's okay to talk about with God how you're actually doing. But this sounds like a lot of challenging experiences that's having outworking in someone's body, as we've seen in previous psalms this week. Do you notice that the locus of attention in these the psalms so far is ourselves? I lie awake. I am like a desert owl. I wither away. But then the psalm flips, it changes direction. And again, it's okay to be aware of how you're feeling. You're not supposed to live in some sort of denial that you're feeling in a rough way. You're permission to say that. But if that's our only reference, there's nowhere else we can get hope from. If we're just internally looking, if we're kind of introspective, some level of introspection is helpful because otherwise you live a kind of disconnected life. But if introspection is all you've got, that's going to be a challenge. And so the psalmist shifts his attention. Verse 12, but you, O Lord, sit enthroned forever. Your renown endures through all generations. Verse 13, you will arise and have compassion on Zion. For it's time to show your favour to her. The appointed time has come. For her stones are dear to your servants. The nations will fear the name of the Lord. All the kings of the earth will revere your glory. For the Lord will rebuild Zion and appear in his glory. He will respond to the prayer of the destitute. He will not despise their plea. Do you see how it shifts again? So I am withering up. I'm like a desert owl. But you, O Lord, you sit enthroned forever. Your renown endures through all generations. So they're recognizing the disparity between how they're feeling and who God is. They're feeling plagued and challenged, but they're recognizing the sovereignty of God. And that can cause a problem. I had a long discussion today about a new book about the COVID crisis. And it's written by a guy called John Piper, who says that God is sovereign over everything. His argument is the virus has been sent by God as a punishment, sometimes a specific punishment. And people wrestle with that, the sovereignty and kingship of God and our own experience of freedom of will and disaster and suffering. And that disconnect is there in the psalm. And it's almost like the psalmist is saying, I'm trying to lift my eyes up to see things from God's perspective and understand what he's doing. And from then he kind of reasons down. He says, you know what? God will not let his people wither away because he's attached his name to them. It matters to God how we do. God has committed himself to us and his covenant will not be broken. And so that gives a kind of mental foothold for this psalmist as he thinks about what God is going to do next. God will not give up on you because he's put his name on you. He has entrusted your future to his care and he will be reliable. I remember I used to work in American Express and I had a rubbish job. I had to open envelopes and grab a check out, and if there was a remittance slip, I had to check whether the check and the remittance slip added up to the same amount. Some of you don't even know what a check is. It's a way of sending money to someone else using paper. Anyway, it was a boring job. They could have probably trained a monkey to do it, but it would have broken animal cruelty laws. But at the end of my shift, I had to stack up all the work I'd done. I had to write my name on it. And it was quite a challenging thing because my reputation went with my name. This is my work. I'm signing it off. I'm proud of it. And God says he's written his name on us, that we are his people. And therefore his reputation is linked with our well-being. And if we don't do well, if God doesn't look after us, his reputation is on the line. And therefore the psalmist recognizes. He says, you will arise and have compassion on Zion, verse 13, for it is time to show her favour. For her stones are dear to your servants, her very dust moves them to pity. The nations will fear the name of the Lord, the reputation of God is at stake. And because of that, God will listen to the cry of the destitute. Maybe that's how you feel. You are feeling destitute. And you're wondering whether God's going to listen to your prayer. Well, here is a promise that the psalmist, in the midst of this trouble, finds God will answer the prayers of the destitute. Verse 23, in the course of my life, he broke my strength. He cut short my days. So I said, do not take me away, O my Lord, in the midst of my days. Your years go on through all generations. In the beginning, you laid the foundations of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you will remain. They will all wear out like a garment. Like clothing, you will change them and they will be discarded. But you remain the same and your years will never end. This is a plea for more life. The psalmist is recognizing the finiteness of their life, but the eternity of God. Even the stars in the sky are like garments that wear out compared to the enduring, eternal nature of God. And so they're making a plea. But you remain the same and your years will never end. Verse 28, the children of your servants will live in your presence. Their descendants will be established before you. I think there's some encouragement there, that when we begin to focus just on ourselves in introspection, that can be helpful, can be cathartic. We can express our pain and worry to God. That's permission to hear. But as we begin to reflect on God's character, it gives us confidence that he will be faithful. He won't give up on us. And then it gives us even more confidence to dare to ask God for what our needs are. And for this particular psalmist, he's asking for life. And it's not wrong to ask for life. In the end, God will decide the length of our days. But if more life and more health is what you want, it's okay to ask for it. This isn't a prosperity gospel where if you just ask hard enough, God will give you. This psalmist seems to be preoccupied with how God will be honoured, that it might be in God's glorious best interest if he answers our prayers. And so he dares to pray. He dares to lift up his application to God for mercy and grace. I don't know about you, I find the more I read these Psalms, the more it kind of reboots my thinking so that I think and see the world through God's eyes. It's a long way to go. I think it's what the Bible means when it says that God puts the mind of Christ in us. In other words, we begin to see things from the perspective of eternity, of the sovereignty of God, of the mercy and compassion of God. And I think that's unfinished business in my life. I don't see that every day. And what I'm finding is the more I'm reading the Psalms, they're reprogramming my thinking and also my praying. And that's helping me day by day, hopefully, to align my thinking, my thoughts, my vision with God's. And the more we do it, the more aligned we become and the closer we become to God. And so I hope this little series on how to pray, again, not promising you all the solutions, but maybe just some tools that might get you started to realign your thoughts and prayers and ideas with God's. And as we do that, I think we'll find a greater intimacy with God, a greater confidence with God, and help to face these difficult days. It's been lovely to spend time with you. Please like and share this if you're watching this on Facebook or on YouTube. And if you've got ideas of how we can make these better, I'm totally all ears. Talk to you again soon. God bless you.